Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel. We focus on theories of everything, mainly theories of everything that you may have overlooked or underlooked or never heard of before, things that are out of the off the beaten path and obscure, generally because they've been suppressed, or perhaps because they're, a little bit too esoteric for mainstream consumption. But they're inspiring to me in many ways because their progenitor is a hero of mine because of how they stuck to it, and they had a vision, and they put their whole life on the line, and they never got paid, they never got any credit, but they did it anyway. Some of those people are what you call crackpots, but some of those people were actually correct. And what we hope to do eventually on this channel is take all of these theories of everything and put them all together. There is only one theory of everything, but there are many different languages that that theory is spoken in. And so if we can kind of figure out what everybody is saying, we could probably put them all together so that we can have an overarching theory of everything's everything. Okay, now today is video number 303 that we've done on the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. And Mr. Larson was an engineer, and he lived in the 20th century, came up with his theory way back in about 1930, and published his two fundamental postulates many years after that in the late 1950s, and then began to write books kind of based on those postulates. And the basic idea behind Larson's reciprocal system is that we live in a universe of motion. The universe is made out of motion, not matter, not energy. And motion is the relationship between space and time. That sets up a generalized reciprocal relationship between space and time. Motion is basically a fraction, with space or time as the numerator, time or space as the denominator, with the general guidelines that space and time have their coordinate aspects, meaning that they both come in 3 dimensions. They both have their clock aspects, meaning that they both progress or flow in no particular direction. So, like the clock is always getting later and later and later, but in no particular direction. Space is always getting farther and farther and farther apart, but in no particular direction, which you would envision using a balloon with dots on it. Blow up the balloon, all the dots are moving away from each other. That's basically clock space, the progression of space. That was also observed by the Hubble telescope, that noted that all of the distant galaxies are moving away from each other. And then also space and time are quantized, meaning that they have a minimum unit, and you have to have a full unit before you have anything. So if you don't have a full unit of space, then you do not have space. If you have one full unit of space in one full unit of time, space over time. Space over time is speed. The car is moving 10 miles per hour, 10 miles of space in 1 hour of time. 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time is the speed of light. which Larson refers to as unit speed. So unit speed is really the background of this universe, or it is the origin, or is what precedes the universe. It is the state of rest in this universe, is this state of nothingness. It's the reference point, or the 0 point, which means that half of the universe is actually moving faster than the speed of light, as well as the half that's moving slower than the speed of light that we're accustomed to. And it goes from there, but that's the basic idea. Larson took those, that's the first fundamental postulate, more or less. And the second just has to do with math and geometry. And took those two postulates and from them deduced a theoretical universe. And if you'd like to go over all the steps of his deduction there, I did about 15 videos on that way back maybe about 8 months ago, called The Outline of the Deductive Development of the Reciprocal System. It was probably, back in February or something. And that goes through really all 165 steps that he takes to get from his postulates to his whole theoretical universe. And then, once he had his theoretical universe, he started writing books on various aspects of it: chemistry, astronomy, physics, and also economics. We've looked at some of that. Also metaphysics. We've looked at his book on metaphysics. And then, unfortunately, Larson died in 1990. And he left behind some followers who carried on the fight and did some more work and even improved upon the theory, arguably. And one of those folks was Dr. KVK Nehru. And we're going to look at an article that he wrote today called Eternal Ceaseless Motion, the New Paradigm of Science. And this is just kind of an overview, I think, and looking in particular at motion and how Larson's concept of motion maybe differs from other scientists in the past, and why that's important. Okay, so this first section is called Newton, Einstein, and Beyond. From Newton's second law, we know that when a force F acts on a mass m, the acceleration, or the rate of change of speed, a, produced is given by A equals F over m. Acceleration equals force over mass. However, experiments conducted on electrically accelerated particles showed quite conclusively that at very high speeds, this is not the case. The magnitude of the acceleration produced by the same force gradually tapers off in a manner that it tends toward 0 as the particle speed approaches the speed of light. So much so, Einstein had shown that no material particle could ever be accelerated to this limiting speed. Since then, it has become an accepted dogma in all physical fields. Even in situations where the empirical evidence clearly indicated existence of faster than light speeds, like in some quasar redshifts, the scientists simply denied the facts because of their unquestioned servitude to Einstein's ideas. This, of course, has had the disastrous result of stumping the development of physical theory. Now, in hindsight, we can see that while it might be true that no material particle could be accelerated to superluminal speeds, Einstein and others have obviously overlooked the possibility that such speeds might exist naturally in their own right. There might well be phenomena or entities that were created at these superluminal speeds and stayed in that speed range forever without being able to decelerate to speeds below that of light. The theoretical conclusion that the light speed barrier cannot be crossed might still be valid. Recognition of this logical possibility opens up a new perspective to the study of the physical universe. Let us refer to Figure 1, which depicts the entire speed range from 0 to infinity. To avoid speaking of any units in the discussion, we shall take the speed of light as unity in this scale. The rationale for this will be apparent shortly. The hatched portion indicates speeds from 0 to unity, the range possible in our universe, according to the prevalent dogma. Remembering that the mathematical inverse of unity is unity, and the inverse of infinity is equivalent to 0, and by representing the speed range from unity to infinity in terms of units of inverse speed, time over space, we arrive at Figure 2. We see herein a theoretically possible symmetric universe with a sector in which the possible speeds range from 0 to unity, and another sector in which the roles of space and time are interchanged with applicable inverse speeds ranging from 0 to unity, meaning that their equivalent speeds range from unity to infinity. Let us call the latter the inverse sector, which is what Larson refers to as the cosmic sector. Unit speed, which is identical to unit inverse speed, acts as the intersector boundary. Okay, this section is called local versus global viewpoints. At this juncture, we would like to point out the important fact that space and time, though they appear so drastically different to our consciousness, are simply the two aspects of motion, speed, inversely related to speed. The following citation from Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine should bring home the point. Space and time being simply the forms of that which is the absolute all. Space and time are one. The Puranas insist on the identity of Vishnu with time and space. And also from her Mahatma letters, the deep is space, both male and female. Even though they seem different to our consciousness, space and time are the same from the standpoint of the universe, being merely the two aspects of motion. With the understanding of this mutually symmetrical but inverse nature of space and time, the possibility of the existence of two sectors of the universe becomes totally logical. The inhabitants of the speed sector view the universe as though pervaded in a three-dimensional spatial frame coupled with a scalar progression in time. The denizens of the inverse speed sector view the universe as though pervaded in an analogous three-dimensional temporal frame, coupled with a uniform scalar progression of space. Since our space would be their time, and vice versa, sentient beings in either sector of the physical universe cannot determine which sector they are in, because both sectors are identical from that sector's viewpoint. We have now come to another significant juncture where we can benefit from the knowledge of the secret doctrine. And here she is again. Its one absolute attribute, which is itself eternal, ceaseless motion, is called in esoteric parlance the great breath, which is the perpetual motion of the universe. And also, we say and affirm that motion, the universal perpetual motion which never ceases, never slackens, nor increases its speed, but goes on like a mill set in motion, whether it has anything to grind or not. The crucial point to be realized is that we humans are prone to think that the natural datum or starting point for every phenomenon, as we are used to see, is zero speed. But as the citations above delineate, the natural datum for the universe is perpetual motion at constant speed, whether there is manifestation or not. Recall the words, whether it has anything to grind or not. It is now only one more step to recognize that this constant perpetual motion is the unit speed that we depicted in Figure 3. Therefore, the null state of the universe is a ceaseless outward progression of space coupled with the analogous progression of time. This is exactly what our astronomical observations show, that all the distant galaxies, all the distant galactic systems are receding from each other. The astronomers now realize that this is not a motion of the galaxies through space, away from some center, but is the steady expansion of space itself. So that's really, the difference between the progression of space, the balloon with dots on it, expanding, as opposed to the Big Bang. The Big Bang would be the motion of galaxies through space. But this is the expansion of space itself. The reciprocal system is the general theory of the physical universe developed just on this foundation, taking motion as the basic constituent of the universe, and that all the forces and phenomena are the several differentiations or modifications of this one existent motion. More from Blavatsky. The occultists assert that all the so-called forces of nature, electricity, magnetism, light, heat, etc., far from being modes of motion of material particles, are, in their ultimate constitution, the differentiated aspects of that universal motion which is discussed. And it is motion with its resulting conflicts, neutralization, equilibration, correlation, to which is due the infinite variety which prevails. This section is called Are Space and Time Quantized? The fact that the universal motion can neither slacken nor increase its speed implies that speed is quantized. And all that is possible is unit speed. Once the unit speed exists as uniform outward progression, it becomes possible to superimpose on it an inward progression. The reciprocal system shows that gravitation is nothing but such inward progression. However, this inward progression could be either inward in space or inward in time. Gravitation in space results from the downward differentiation of the primary motion, which produces matter as we know it. On the other hand, the upward differentiation of the primary motion produces gravitation in time, or the inverse gravitation, arising from the matter of the inverse sector or the cosmic sector, namely the inverse matter or cosmic matter, or as the legacy scientists call it, antimatter. We do not normally encounter the particles of inverse matter for the simple reason that they form aggregates in three-dimensional time and not in three-dimensional space. They are widely and randomly distributed in our familiar three-dimensional spatial reference frame. Now, the reason why space and time appear so different to our observation should be apparent. In the local environment, the inward motion of gravitation counterbalances the outward progression of space, and we see a stationary space. The concomitant outward progression of time, however, is unchecked, and we observe it as a scalar progression. Scalar because whatever number of dimensions time has, there is no geometric relationship between them and the dimensions of space. In the inverse sector, gravitation acts inward in time and counterbalances the primary outward progression of time, giving time a stationary three-dimensional temporal frame. Radiation, since it moves at unit speed, is at the boundary of the two sectors and is visible from either sector, whichever sector it originates. Therefore, the radiation from the stars of the inverse sector should show up as radiation of high inverse temperature, that is, low temperature, with absolutely isotropic spatial distribution. This is exactly what we observe in the cosmic microwave background. In fact, by the reciprocal system of theory, we can even arrive at the precise value of the temperature of the background radiation. Conventional theories, since they assume that this radiation was emitted by the stars of our sector, have pretty difficult task reconciling its absolute isotropy with the patent non-uniform distribution of the stellar aggregates in space. Another implication of the existence of unit speed is that it has to be the ratio of a unit of space to a unit of time. Thus, the reciprocal system points out that both space and time are quantized. We may recall that at the turn of the century, Max Planck had come up with a similar astonishing discovery, that energy is quantized, and set the pace for the subsequent revolutions in the development of science. Okay, I think I'm going to stop right there. Now, Nehru, the way that he writes, it's kind of, he assumes that you are pretty much a scientist, I would guess, and, this should be apparent. This is obviously true. And so that bypasses me in many ways. My advice is to just read, listen to the video over and over, slow it down. He's got it in there. And you know, in many of my past videos, I cover most of this ground as well. But I think it's important to hear it from different voices, because some people resonate with one voice and they something clicks. Maybe that if somebody else says it, it doesn't click. And so that's why I kind of like to, I think that repetition is very important. Hear it over and over again, maybe slightly differently one time than another. Add a few things in there. You know, everything, every person kind of clicks at a different point. And, you know, depending on their own reference system and their own experiences. And so sometimes something will click in, even though it was kind of right in front of their face all the time. But it took a special word to trigger their understanding. And so, you know, Dr. Nehru goes through the material, covers ground very, very quickly. And, you know, you just have to kind of slow him down and try to, you know, go sentence by sentence over what he says, to see whether that makes sense to you. It still might be nonsense to you, but that still doesn't mean that the theory is nonsense. It just means that the way that this person is presenting it is nonsensical to you. There may be another researcher who puts it in a different way that makes it, puts it on a silver platter for you. So, you know, different strokes for different folks and so on. And you just want to try to present it from multiple different ways. I mean, there's some of these things I've read over a dozen times, and it's not till the 12th time that it like clicks in for me. Oh, that's what they're talking about. You know, sometimes you have to build up your context, you know, because this is all very new stuff. And it also requires that you kind of unlearn some stuff too. I think the main thing is that you have to have an open mind. You have to not question things out of hand. Questioning things is a good thing, you know, but to dismiss things out of hand because they don't fit into what you've already know is very dangerous, because what you already know might not be right. And so sometimes you have to just suspend your disbelief and just say, okay, I don't get it. I don't know where this person is going, but I'm going to hear them out, hear out their entire statement, and then I'm going to, you know, let it mix around in my head, you know, and then I can make a reasonable determination. But too many times, especially among scientists, they hear one thing that disagrees with what they already believe, and they're just looking to dismiss it. You know, as soon as they have one excuse to dismiss it, they dismiss it. And that's, you know, thoroughly unscientific. So we will come back and look at this second part of this paper here from Nehru, and then maybe move on to something else tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.